3 a.m., sparks flying from my driveway, Veronica screaming for help, her Tesla smoking like a barbecue. Just another Tuesday in Sunset Ridge Estates. You're probably wondering how a quiet electrician's life turned into a midnight electrical nightmare. Well, it started when I spent $25,000 on solar panels after my wife's medical bills crushed us. Instead of promised savings, I got $890 electric bills that made no sense. That's when I discovered the truth. Veronica Sterling, our HOA president, had been sneaking into my yard with a master key, stealing my power to charge her luxury Tesla while threatening me with fines for parking my work truck in my driveway. The smell of burnt wiring that night was just the beginning. See, what Veronica didn't know is that I'm an electrician who controls every single volt flowing through my system, and I'd been watching her steal for months. What would you do if your HOA president literally stole your electricity? Where are you watching from? Because what happened next will shock you. Let me back up and tell you how this nightmare started. I'm Jake Morrison, 45, a union electrician in Sunset Ridge Estates, Arizona. After my wife Sarah's 3-year cancer battle, medical bills crushed us with $180,000 in debt that insurance wouldn't touch. Working double shifts wasn't cutting it. So I invested my last $25,000 in Tesla solar panels with a Powerwall battery, hoping to save $200 monthly on electricity. In Arizona's brutal summers, that's life-changing money. Enter Veronica Sterling. HOA president for 8 years, pharmaceutical executive's wife, drives a pristine white Tesla Model S. Picture perfectly manicured nails, always tapping her iPhone, voice carrying that unmistakable, "I need to speak to your manager" undertone, designer tennis outfits for her morning compliance patrol walks. The smell of hot asphalt and creosote bushes hung in the desert air as I came home 3 weeks later to find a bright orange citation, $200 fine for commercially branded vehicle. My work truck has a tiny company logo. Meanwhile, Martinez down the street parks a giant neon green plumbing van daily. Apparently different rules for different people. "Ma'am, I think there's a mistake," I started diplomatically. "Mr. Morrison," Veronica cut me off, nails tapping. "The covenant clearly states no commercial vehicles. Perhaps you should read your agreement more carefully." "But what about Martinez's van?" Her smile was colder than her Tesla's AC. "I don't see that as a violation." Good day. Red flag number 1. But I paid the fine and moved on. Then July's electric bill arrived. $890 in peak solar season, when my panels should have been cranking out maximum power. As an electrician, I know systems like most people know coffee. I grabbed my multimeter and investigated. Voltage readings were chaotic, irregularities that shouldn't exist. Following wiring through our shared utility easement, I discovered an unauthorized connection spliced directly into my main solar feed. Someone was stealing my electricity. The metallic click-clack of Veronica's heels during evening inspections suddenly seemed more sinister. I installed security cameras that weekend. What I captured at 2:17 a.m. changed everything. There was Veronica Sterling sneaking into my backyard with a master key, bold as brass. She unplugged her Tesla from her garage and connected it directly to my solar system. The timestamp showed 47 minutes before she snuck back home. I had her dead to rights. Utility theft, breaking and entering, fraud. But when I confronted her with footage, Veronica's response floored me. "I don't know what you think you saw, but false accusations against board members could result in additional violations. I'd be very careful if I were you." The vibration of her phone buzzing against granite felt ominous as she typed rapidly, never breaking eye contact. "In fact," she continued, "I've been meaning to discuss your compliance issues. Trash cans out too early, garden hose improperly stored, mailbox needs repainting. Each violation carries a $150 fine." She was escalating. Fast. "Here's what's happening, Mr. Morrison. You'll stop this harassment, pay your fines like a good neighbor, and we'll forget this conversation. Otherwise." She gestured toward my house like she owned it. The threat hung in the desert air like humidity before a monsoon storm. What Veronica didn't know was that I'd been documenting everything. Every mysterious bill spike, every suspicious noise, every bogus citation. I had spreadsheets tracking her patrol patterns, voltage logs showing exactly when power was diverted, and now video evidence of her breaking into my property. She thought she was dealing with some broke electrician who'd roll over for authority. She had no clue I'd spent 15 years troubleshooting electrical problems that stumped engineers, finding hidden connections, solving puzzles that made grown men cry, and Veronica Sterling had just become my most dangerous puzzle yet. I looked her straight in the eye and smiled. "Veronica, you just made a very expensive mistake." Her confident smirk faltered for the first time. Game on. Veronica didn't waste time. 2 days after our little chat, I found another citation stuck to my door. This time, she was going nuclear. Formal HOA complaint, claiming my solar panels create dangerous electrical interference, affecting neighborhood safety. She demanded immediate disconnection within 30 days. I stared at the citation, feeling that familiar metallic taste in my mouth that comes with pure rage. The timing was no coincidence. This was filed the exact same day my monitoring equipment showed her highest theft levels yet. She knew I was tracking her, and she was trying to eliminate the evidence. But here's where being an electrician for 15 years pays off. I'd done my homework when installing those panels. I pulled out my original permits and covenant documentation, spreading them across my kitchen table. The smell of burnt coffee from my ancient Mr. Coffee mixed with the satisfaction of finding exactly what I needed. My solar installation had been pre-approved by the previous HOA board 3 years ago. Every permit was filed correctly, every inspection passed, every requirement met. Veronica's demand for removal wasn't just wrong, it was legally invalid. Time for some education. Back when I was researching solar installations, I'd learned about Arizona's Solar Rights Act, Statute ARS. Section 44-1761, which specifically prohibits HOA restrictions on properly permitted solar installations. This law exists because too many power-hungry HOAs tried blocking solar panels for aesthetic reasons. Every homeowner should know this protection exists. I spent the weekend preparing my counterattack. Copies of permits, photos of the installation, legal statute references, even a professional electrical safety report I'd commissioned from my buddy Carlos at the city. Everything organized in a thick manila folder that would make a lawyer proud. The monthly HOA board meeting was held in our community center, a bland beige room that smelled like industrial carpet cleaner and broken dreams. Veronica sat at the head table with her 2 puppet board members, Gerald Blackwood, a retired insurance adjuster who looked like he ate audits for breakfast, and Patricia Henley, a real estate agent whose smile was faker than a $3 bill. Item 7, Veronica announced, the Morrison solar panel safety concern. I stood up, folder in hand. "Ma'am, I'd like to address this complaint directly." "Mr. Morrison, this is a closed session." "Actually," I interrupted, remembering something I'd researched after the last violation. Arizona Statute 33-1248 gives homeowners the right to speak at board meetings regarding issues affecting their property. That's state law. Gerald's face turned the color of oatmeal. Patricia suddenly found her pen fascinating. I opened my folder and began my presentation. This solar installation was pre-approved by this board on March 15, 2021. Here's the approval letter, signed by then-President Margaret Walsh. Here are the city permits, the electrical inspection certificates, and the Arizona Public Service Interconnection Agreement. The sound of papers rustling echoed through the silent room like thunder. Furthermore, I continued, Arizona Revised Statute 44-1761 prohibits HOA restrictions on compliant solar installations. This complaint violates state law. Veronica's face had gone through several interesting color changes, settling on a shade that reminded me of raw liver. "Mr. Morrison, we have concerns about electrical interference. Here's a professional electrical safety report commissioned last week." I slid the document across the table. "My system meets or exceeds all safety standards, zero interference with neighborhood electrical systems." Then came the surprise I wasn't expecting. Gerald actually read the report and looked up nervously. Veronica, this seems pretty comprehensive. Maybe we should table this until we can consult our attorney." "I don't think that's necessary," Veronica snapped, but her voice had lost its confident edge. "I make a motion to withdraw the complaint," Patricia said suddenly, probably realizing she didn't want to be part of a legal disaster. "Seconded," Gerald mumbled. And just like that, Veronica's nuclear option fizzled like a wet firecracker. But she wasn't done. As neighbors filed out, congratulating me on standing up to the board, Veronica cornered me near the exit. The vibration of the air conditioning unit created an ominous hum as she spoke quietly, ensuring no one else could hear. This isn't over, Mr. Morrison. I'll be watching your property very carefully from now on. I'm counting on it, I replied, patting my phone. My cameras love the attention. The next morning, I woke up to find my trash cans had been inspected and found improperly positioned. $150 fine. My garden hose was dangerously stored. Another $150. Even my mailbox was suddenly in need of maintenance. $150 more. Veronica had declared war. But what she didn't know was that I'd already started installing additional monitoring equipment around my property. Professional-grade stuff that would capture everything in high definition. Every late-night visit, every unauthorized connection, every violation of my property rights. She wanted to play inspection games? Fine. But now I'd be inspecting her too. The crunch of gravel under her heels at 2:17 a.m. that night told me round 2 was about to begin. Round 2 started with Veronica playing politics. Within a week, she'd recruited her board puppets into a formal voting bloc against me. Gerald Blackwood and Patricia Henley suddenly became very interested in electrical safety, despite neither knowing a circuit breaker from a light switch. The smell of chlorine from the community pool drifted through my open window as I read their latest masterpiece. An emergency electrical safety inspection requirement for all solar installations over 2 years old. Cost? A modest $750 fee payable immediately. But here's where Veronica revealed her true nature. The inspection requirement mysteriously exempted her own rooftop panels, installed exactly 1 month after mine. Same company, same equipment, same everything. Apparently, 30 days made all the difference for safety concerns. I was getting a masterclass in petty tyranny. While Veronica played politics, I was doing what electricians do best, following the evidence. My upgraded monitoring equipment revealed something far more dangerous than simple theft. The unauthorized connection wasn't just stealing power. It was creating voltage fluctuations threatening my $15,000 Powerwall battery system. Every time her Tesla charged, my equipment screamed in protest. Error codes flashed like Christmas lights. If this continued, I'd face expensive repairs that would wipe out my savings. That's when I remembered something from my union safety training years ago about job site electrical theft. Utility theft in Arizona falls under revised statute 13-1802, a Class 1 misdemeanor carrying up to 6 months jail plus full restitution. Most people think stealing electricity is just a civil matter, but Arizona takes it seriously. Time to escalate professionally. I filed a formal complaint with the Arizona Corporation Commission, the state utility regulator. These folks don't mess around with electrical safety violations. I included monitoring data, photos of unauthorized connections, and detailed reports showing how Veronica's theft endangered neighborhood systems. But Veronica wasn't finished. At the next board meeting, she dropped her nuclear option, claiming my solar system was back-feeding dangerous electricity into the neighborhood grid, demanding immediate emergency disconnection. The echo of her voice in the nearly empty community center made her accusations sound even more desperate. "This is about protecting our community from dangerous electrical experiments," she declared, waving printouts of electrical codes she'd obviously Googled. That's when a voice cut through her technical nonsense like a hot knife through butter. "Excuse me, but everything you just said is complete gibberish." I turned to see an older Hispanic woman I didn't recognize, silver hair pulled back, wearing a vintage NASA t-shirt. Her voice carried the quiet authority of someone who'd spent decades making things work. "Ma'am," Gerald sputtered, "are you qualified to make that assessment?" Rosa Martinez, retired electrical engineer, 40 years designing power systems for aerospace. She smiled sweetly. "I think I can handle residential solar panels." Veronica's face went through several color changes, settling on an unflattering shade of panic. "This is a closed meeting." "Actually," Rosa interrupted, "homeowner meetings are public record in Arizona." And what Mr. Morrison described? Textbook perfect installation. The metallic taste of copper pennies filled my mouth as I realized I'd just found an ally with serious credentials. After the meeting, Rosa approached me in the parking lot. "Walk with me," she said quietly. "There's something you need to know." Her voice dropped to a whisper as we reached her car. "I've been tracking electrical anomalies in this neighborhood for months. Your house isn't the only one with suspicious billing patterns." My blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" "Martinez mentioned weird electric bills last winter. The Hendersons, too. All solar panel owners. All experiencing unexplained usage spikes." Rosa's eyes glinted in the parking lot lights. I think your HOA president is running a much bigger operation than you realize. This wasn't personal revenge. This was organized crime. The next morning brought confirmation of Veronica's desperation, an anonymous note tucked under my windshield wiper. Stop digging or accidents happen. The paper smelled like expensive perfume, the same scent lingering in the community center after board meetings. But the real surprise came that afternoon. Rosa texted, "Emergency. Come over now. Bring your laptop." I found her in her kitchen, laptop open, showing security footage from the night before. "Watch this," she said, hitting play. The timestamp showed 2:47 a.m. There was Veronica, dressed in dark clothing, systematically checking utility boxes throughout the neighborhood. Not just mine, 5 different houses. "She's been at this for months," Rosa said grimly. "Maybe years." I stared at the footage, watching Veronica move between houses like she owned the entire neighborhood's electrical infrastructure. How many families has she been stealing from? That's what we're going to find out. Rosa's engineer brain was already working. Because if I'm right, we're not dealing with petty theft anymore. What are we dealing with? Rosa looked up from her laptop, eyes hard as steel. Federal wire fraud. And she just made her biggest mistake, threatening the wrong electrician. The hunt was about to begin. Veronica's desperation hit new levels when cops showed up at my door at 6 a.m. "Mr. Morrison, we have a stalking complaint from Veronica Sterling. Sergeant Davis looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. She claims you've been following her, taking photos, making threats." The crisp desert air carried the smell of sage as I poured him coffee. "Sergeant, I've been documenting theft on my own property." He lowered his voice. "Look, this is the 3rd Sterling complaint this month. Different neighbors, same harassment stories. Between you and me, lady seems to have issues with everyone." That confirmed what Rosa and I suspected. Veronica's reign of terror was crumbling. While I dealt with bogus police reports, Rosa had been busy. Her old engineering firm lent us professional auditing equipment, and what we discovered was staggering. Veronica hadn't just tapped my system, she'd created an illegal microgrid connecting 5 neighborhood solar installations. 14 months of systematic theft, $12,000 stolen from families living on fixed incomes. "This changes everything," Rosa explained, spreading voltage analysis charts across my kitchen table. The metallic smell of ozone from overloaded connections drifted through my open window. "She's not just stealing from neighbors, she's defrauding Arizona Public Service directly." During my union days, I'd learned that Arizona utility fraud carries treble damages in civil court. Victims recover 3 times actual losses plus attorney fees. But Rosa had uncovered something bigger. Her husband's pharmaceutical company claimed $2.3 million in federal green energy tax credits, she said grimly. "Those require independent electrical systems. Her interconnected theft network, that's federal tax fraud." We weren't dealing with HOA drama anymore. This was FBI territory. But Veronica had one more nuclear option. At the next board meeting, she called for immediate foreclosure proceedings against my property for ongoing safety violations and harassment of board members. The ancient community center's air conditioning created an ominous rattle as Gerald and Patricia nodded like trained seals. "I call for an immediate vote," Veronica announced triumphantly. "Hold on." I stood up, phone in hand. "Before you steal my house, let me educate you about Arizona foreclosure law." I'd researched this after Rosa warned me about Escalation. HOAs can only foreclose for unpaid dues exceeding $1,200. My fines total $950. Gerald went pale. "Is that right?" "Completely. This vote is legally meaningless." Veronica's mask finally slipped. "We'll add more violations." "Try it. I've documented every bogus citation, every case of selective enforcement, every civil rights violation. My attorney's building a beautiful case." But the real breakthrough came after the meeting. Rosa had been quietly organizing affected neighbors, and we weren't alone. The Martinez family, the Hendersons, and the Patels, all victims of Veronica's systematic abuse. "There's power in numbers," Rosa said during our first group meeting in my garage. Evidence files stacked on my workbench told the story of years-long corruption. That's when everything clicked. Instead of fighting locally, we were going federal. Rosa had contacts at the Arizona Attorney General's office from her consulting days, but I needed one final piece of evidence, something proving ongoing conspiracy. I installed commercial-grade monitoring equipment that weekend, sensors capable of tracking every electron flowing through my system. If Veronica kept stealing, I'd document it with forensic precision. The trap was nearly perfect. But Veronica had her own surprise, waiting. Tuesday night, my new sensors detected something alarming. Someone was tampering with my main electrical connections, not stealing power but actually cutting wires, dangerous stuff that could start fires or electrocute someone. I grabbed my flashlight and headed outside, expecting to catch Veronica red-handed. Instead, I found her lying unconscious in my backyard, electrical burns on her hands, my utility box sparking dangerously nearby. She'd tried to disable my monitoring system and nearly killed herself in the process. The irony was perfect. The woman who'd been stealing my electricity for months had finally learned why you don't mess with live wires. But as an electrician, I couldn't let even my worst enemy die from electrical shock. I killed the main breaker and called 911. "This is Jake Morrison on Saguaro Drive. I need an ambulance and fire department. Electrical accident." As paramedics worked on Veronica, I noticed something interesting. In her panicked state, thinking I might be seriously injured too, she started confessing everything to the EMTs. "I was just trying to stop his cameras," she babbled. "He's been recording me taking power from his system. I've been using his electricity for months, but everyone does it, right? It's not really stealing if it's just sitting there." The body cameras were rolling, every word recorded. When Sergeant Davis arrived with the fire department, I handed him a USB drive containing months of surveillance footage. "Sergeant, I think this might help with those harassment complaints." Veronica had just confessed to everything on official emergency response recordings. Game over. While Veronica recovered in the hospital from her electrical misadventure, Rosa and I dove deep into the evidence we'd been gathering. What we discovered in those quiet hours changed everything we thought we knew about this case. My commercial-grade monitoring equipment had been recording data for 3 weeks before Veronica's accident. The patterns Rosa found made both of us sick to our stomachs. "Jake, look at these timestamps," Rosa said, pointing to her laptop screen in my kitchen. The smell of burnt coffee from my overworked Mr. Coffee mixed with the gravity of what we were seeing. "She's not just stealing from you and 4 other houses." I leaned over her shoulder, studying the electrical consumption data. "How many?" 7 houses, maybe 8. And look at this." She highlighted a series of voltage spikes. "She's been doing this for over 2 years, not 14 months. The theft patterns go back to when the Hendersons first installed their system. The scope was staggering. We weren't looking at $12,000 in theft anymore. We were looking at over $20,000 stolen from families who'd invested their life savings in solar panels to reduce their electricity costs." But Rosa had found something even more damaging while Veronica was unconscious and couldn't interfere with our investigation. "Remember how I mentioned her husband's tax credits?" Rosa pulled up a government database on her laptop. "I did some deeper digging while she was in the hospital. Sterling Pharmaceuticals claimed $2.3 million in federal green energy incentives for an independent residential solar installation. Meaning? Meaning to qualify for those credits, their system had to be completely separate from any other electrical source. No shared connections, no grid tie with neighbors, no interconnected systems. Rosa's voice carried the precision of an engineer delivering bad news. "Her theft network invalidates their entire federal tax credit claim." The metallic taste in my mouth wasn't from electrical work this time. It was from pure satisfaction. Veronica had unknowingly created a federal case against herself. But the real bombshell came when Rosa pulled up Veronica's original HOA board election documents from 8 years ago. "I requested these from the county clerk's office yesterday," she said, spreading printouts across my table. "Look at her financial disclosure forms." I scanned the documents, looking for anything unusual. Then I saw it. Veronica had listed her previous address as Scottsdale, Arizona, with no mention of any prior bankruptcies or foreclosures. "Now look at this." Rosa handed me a credit report she'd obtained through perfectly legal channels. Veronica Sterling filed for bankruptcy in California in 2015, lost her house to foreclosure, had to move to Arizona to start over. She'd lied on her HOA board application, election fraud. "There's more," Rosa continued. "I cross-referenced her California address with public utility records. Guess what she was investigated for in 2014? Utility theft? Bingo. Pacific Gas and Electric flagged her for suspicious electrical usage patterns. No charges filed, but the investigation was documented. We were looking at a career criminal who'd moved to Arizona specifically to continue her electrical theft operation. She'd gotten herself elected to the HOA board to gain access to neighborhood utility infrastructure and had been systematically stealing from solar panel owners for years. The personal impact hit me hardest when Rosa showed me the financial breakdown. During the 18 months when my electric bills should have been lowest thanks to my solar investment, Veronica had stolen enough electricity to cover my mortgage payments for 3 months. 3 months I could have spent less time working double shifts and more time processing my grief over Sarah's death. 3 months of financial stress that had been completely unnecessary. This wasn't just theft anymore. This was a systematic operation that had stolen time, money, and peace of mind from multiple families. Rosa closed her laptop and looked at me seriously. "Jake, we're not dealing with an angry neighbor anymore. We're dealing with organized fraud spanning multiple states and federal tax systems. What do? We take this to the FBI." Rosa and I spent the next week transforming my garage into a war room. Coffee-stained charts covered every surface, electrical monitoring printouts hung from clotheslines, and my workbench groaned under the weight of evidence binders that would make a federal prosecutor weep with joy. Our first call was to the Arizona Attorney General's Consumer Protection Division, a free service that most people don't know exists. The intake officer, Maria Gonzalez, listened to our summary with growing excitement. "Mr. Morrison, what you're describing sounds like organized racketeering. We'll need to coordinate with federal authorities, but we can start the state investigation immediately." The smell of Rosa's industrial-strength coffee mixed with the satisfaction of finally having official backing. We weren't fighting this alone anymore, but we needed more than just state support. Rosa had kept in touch with colleagues from her aerospace days, and one of them happened to work for a local TV station as a technical consultant. Channel 12's consumer reporter, Janet Wu, specialized in HOA abuse investigations. "I've been waiting for a story like this," Janet told us during our meeting at a coffee shop near the station. HOA corruption with federal fraud angles? This could be a multi-part series. While Rosa coordinated media strategy, I focused on what I do best, the technical documentation. Every stolen kilowatt hour had to be precisely calculated, every voltage irregularity documented, every unauthorized connection photographed from multiple angles. The financial math was staggering. $20,000 in stolen electricity over 2 years, plus $6,800 in damaged equipment from voltage fluctuations. Under Arizona's consumer protection laws, we could recover triple damages, nearly $80,000 total. But here's something most people don't know. Arizona revised statutes allow civil RICO claims for ongoing criminal enterprises. If we could prove Veronica's operation met federal racketeering definitions, we could potentially recover punitive damages that would bankrupt her. Our strategy centered around timing. Rosa had discovered that Arizona HOA law requires monthly meetings to allow homeowner comments under statute ARS Section 33-1248. They literally cannot legally silence us. We'd use the next meeting for our public revelation, simultaneously notifying the utility company, federal authorities, and media. The planning sessions became a neighborhood affair. Martinez brought his suspicious electric bills dating back 18 months. The Hendersons contributed photos of Veronica's late-night inspections of their utility box. The Patels had recorded audio of Veronica threatening them with foreclosure for questioning their electrical costs. Rosa's engineering background proved invaluable for organizing evidence. She created a master timeline showing the correlation between Veronica's board election, the start of theft activities, and the targeting of specific solar panel owners. The pattern was unmistakable. "Look at this," Rosa said, pointing to her color-coded chart. She specifically targeted fixed-income families and widowed homeowners, people she thought wouldn't fight back. The crunch of gravel under tires outside my garage interrupted our planning as Sergeant Davis pulled into my driveway. He'd been keeping us updated on the official investigation triggered by Veronica's electrocution incident. "Thought you'd want to know," he said, declining Rosa's offer of coffee. Arizona Public Service completed their investigation. They're filing federal fraud charges. Apparently, stealing electricity across utility districts makes it interstate commerce. Federal charges meant FBI involvement. Our local drama was about to become a federal case. but we needed backup plans. If Veronica attempted to destroy evidence or retaliate against neighbors, we had protective orders pre-filed with the county courthouse. Rosa's paralegal friend had helped us navigate the paperwork maze. The technical preparation required precision that would make NASA proud. I installed additional real-time monitoring equipment designed to capture theft during our planned confrontation. Every electron flowing through unauthorized connections would be documented in real time with timestamp accuracy to the microsecond. The sound of Rosa's ancient printer churning out evidence packets filled my garage as we prepared materials for distribution. Each affected neighbor got a complete documentation package: utility records, legal statute references, contact information for state and federal authorities. Our ace in the hole was Rosa's contact at the Arizona Residential Utility Consumer Office. RUCO provides free advocacy for utility fraud victims. Most Arizona residents don't know this service exists, but they'll actually send investigators to your house and represent you in utility disputes at no cost. We had them on speed dial. The night before our planned confrontation, I made final adjustments to my monitoring equipment. Tomorrow would either end Veronica's reign of terror or escalate this conflict to levels none of us had imagined. Rosa arrived at dawn with breakfast burritos and a thermos of coffee strong enough to wake the dead. "You ready for this?" I looked around my garage at the evidence of months of meticulous investigation. Charts, photographs, legal documents, technical analyses, everything we needed to expose a criminal enterprise that had been hiding behind HOA authority for years. Let's end this. The texture of laminated documents felt solid in my hands as I loaded evidence boxes into my truck. Today, Veronica Sterling would finally face justice. Or so we thought. Veronica came out of the hospital swinging harder than ever. 2 days after her electrical accident, she showed up at my door with a briefcase and desperation in her eyes. "Jake, we need to talk." Gone was the imperious HOA president voice. This was pure panic. "I think there's been a misunderstanding about the electrical situation." I opened the door wider, making sure my security cameras captured everything. "What kind of misunderstanding, Veronica?" She pulled out an envelope thick with cash. "I've been reviewing the utility records, and you're right. There may have been some irregular connections. I'm prepared to compensate you for any inconvenience. $7,500. Cash." The smell of her expensive perfume couldn't mask the desperation rolling off her in waves. She was trying to buy her way out of federal charges. "That's interesting timing," I said, keeping my voice level, "especially since my security system recorded you offering me a bribe." Her perfectly applied makeup couldn't hide the panic that flashed across her face. She'd just committed another felony on camera. But Veronica wasn't finished. The next morning brought a surprise visit from Arizona Public Service. An emergency safety inspection of my solar system scheduled for the day before our planned HOA confrontation. "This is highly irregular," the utility inspector told me privately. "Someone filed a formal safety complaint with forged signatures from multiple neighbors. The paperwork looks suspicious, but we're required to investigate." Rosa's contact at APS had tipped us off. Veronica was trying to have my system disconnected before we could expose her theft network. While I dealt with bogus inspections, my upgraded monitoring equipment caught something that made my blood run cold. Veronica had installed remote-controlled disconnect switches on her unauthorized connections. She was planning to destroy evidence by eliminating the theft network entirely. The vibration of illegal electrical switches activating through my sensitive monitoring equipment woke me at 3 a.m. I watched in real time as Veronica remotely disconnected her Tesla charging station from my system, then reconnected it an hour later. She was testing her ability to make evidence disappear instantly. But here's something I'd learned during my union safety training. Destroying evidence during an active investigation is felony obstruction under Arizona. Revised Statute 13-2809. We're talking up to 2 years in prison. Every time she activated those switches, she was committing another crime. Veronica's next move showed just how desperate she'd become. She sent a mass mailing to every house in the neighborhood claiming I was conducting dangerous electrical experiments that threatened community safety. The letter was a masterpiece of manipulation. "As your elected HOA president, I have a duty to protect our families from reckless individuals who modify electrical systems without proper permits or safety oversight. Mr. Morrison's unauthorized solar modifications have already resulted in 1 electrical fire, and experts warn that additional incidents are inevitable." Rosa found one of these letters stuck to her door and brought it straight over. "She's doubling down on lies," Rosa said, shaking the paper like evidence of war crimes. "This could actually help us. Written defamation is easier to prosecute than verbal threats." The neighborhood was polarizing rapidly. Families who'd experienced Veronica's harassment quietly supported us, while others, intimidated by years of retaliation, sided with her out of fear. The Kowalski family actually posted signs supporting HOA integrity and electrical safety, despite having no clue what any of this meant. But Veronica's technical desperation was showing. During the next board meeting, she made claims about electrical systems that any real engineer could debunk in seconds. "Mr. Morrison's solar panels are creating dangerous harmonic distortions in the neighborhood power grid," she announced to the 5 people who bothered attending. "These distortions could damage appliances and even cause fires." Rosa couldn't contain herself. "That's complete nonsense. Harmonic distortion from residential solar is negligible and regulated by IEEE standards." "Ma'am, I don't think you're qualified. MIT electrical engineering degree, 40 years in aerospace power systems design. Try me." Gerald and Patricia exchanged nervous glances. They were finally realizing that Veronica had been feeding them technical garbage for months. The acrid smell of overheating insulation from dangerously overloaded connections drifted through my garage window that night as I monitored Veronica's increasingly erratic behavior. She was activating and deactivating her theft network randomly, probably trying to confuse any monitoring equipment. But my commercial-grade sensors captured every switch activation with forensic precision. Every evidence destruction attempt was automatically logged with GPS coordinates and timestamps that would hold up in federal court. The sound of Veronica's anxious pacing on her concrete driveway during late-night phone calls carried across the desert air. She was calling someone repeatedly, probably lawyers, trying to find a way out of the federal investigation she didn't know was already underway. What she didn't realize was that every attempt to destroy evidence was making her legal situation exponentially worse. Federal prosecutors love obstruction charges because they're easy to prove and carry serious prison time. Tomorrow's HOA meeting would be her last chance to come clean voluntarily. Somehow, I doubted she'd take it. Veronica's final act of desperation came at 4 a.m. on the morning of our planned confrontation. I woke up to my phone buzzing with a text from the county courthouse. "Restraining order filed against you. Hearing scheduled today at 2 p.m. She was trying to legally silence me hours before the HOA meeting. The restraining order was a work of fiction that would have impressed Stephen King. According to Veronica's sworn statement, I had been stalking her property, making threatening phone calls, and conducting surveillance that made her fear for her safety. She claimed my electrical monitoring equipment was actually spying devices pointed at her bedroom windows. Rosa arrived with coffee and fury in equal measure. "This is textbook abuse of the legal system," she said, reading through the court documents. But her paralegal friend helped us prepare for exactly this. We'd filed a counter-restraining order the week before, complete with our comprehensive theft evidence. The judge would have to review both cases simultaneously, meaning Veronica's lies would be exposed in court before our HOA meeting. But Veronica wasn't finished with her scorched earth strategy. At 6 a.m., I heard the sound of metal cutters near my utility box. Looking out my window, I saw her dressed in dark clothing, actually attempting to physically disable my solar system by cutting the main connections. She had no idea that my monitoring equipment was recording everything in 4K high definition. What happened next was both terrifying and perfectly ironic. As Veronica tried to cut through my main electrical feed, she grabbed the wrong wire. Instead of the dead connection she thought she was cutting, she grabbed a live 240-volt line. The sharp crack of electrical arcing split the desert silence, followed immediately by Veronica's panicked screaming. Sparks flew like 4th of July fireworks as she danced away from the utility box, her wire cutters glowing red-hot in the pre-dawn darkness. The smell of burnt copper and singed hair filled the air as every light in her house flickered from the electrical surge she'd created. Here's the thing about being an electrician. Even when someone's been stealing from you for months, you don't let them get electrocuted in your backyard. Professional ethics and basic human decency don't take breaks for revenge fantasies. I hit my main breaker, killing power to the entire system, then ran outside with my first aid kit. "Veronica, don't move. Are you hurt?" She was sitting on the ground, staring at her hands with a mixture of shock and terror. I can't feel my fingers. Jake, I think I really messed up this time." I called 911 while checking her for serious burns. "This is Jake Morrison on Saguaro Drive. I need an ambulance and fire department. Electrical accident, possible electrocution." The irony wasn't lost on me. I was saving the life of someone who'd been systematically stealing from me while trying to destroy evidence of her crimes. But here's where Veronica's panic worked in our favor. As the paramedics arrived, she apparently thought I'd been electrocuted too, because she started confessing everything to the EMTS. "Officer, I was just trying to disconnect his monitoring equipment," she told Sergeant Davis between sobs. "He's been recording me taking power from his system for months. I know it looks bad, but I've been using his electricity to charge my car." "Everyone in the neighborhood does it, right? It's not really stealing if the power is just sitting there unused." The body cameras were rolling. Every word was being recorded for official records. "Ma'am," Sergeant Davis said carefully, "are you saying you've been taking electricity without permission for over a year?" But Jake was going to expose everything at tonight's meeting. I had to stop him somehow. My husband doesn't know about the federal tax credits we claimed. If this comes out, we could lose everything. I watched multiple neighbors emerge from their houses, drawn by the ambulance lights and commotion. Mrs. Henderson was recording everything on her phone. Martinez was taking photos. Even the Patels were documenting Veronica's public meltdown. The weight of 18 months of evidence destruction had finally crushed her psychologically. She was confessing to federal crimes in front of half the neighborhood. "Jake," she called out as the paramedics loaded her into the ambulance. "I'll pay you back. All of it. The electricity, the equipment damage, everything. Just please don't let them arrest my husband." He really didn't know about the theft. Sergeant Davis approached me as the ambulance pulled away. "Well, that certainly makes our investigation easier. She just confessed to utility theft, fraud, and obstruction of justice on official emergency response recordings." The desert sun was rising, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that reminded me why I loved Arizona despite all the HOA drama. But today felt different. Today felt like justice was finally possible. "Sergeant, I have 18 months of surveillance footage documenting everything she just confessed to." "I figured you might. Federal investigators will want copies of everything." The final confrontation I'd been planning was no longer necessary. Veronica had just destroyed herself more thoroughly than any HOA meeting ever could. But we'd still have that meeting. The neighborhood deserved to know the full scope of what had been happening under their noses. Justice was coming. The emergency HOA meeting that evening became the most attended neighborhood gathering in Sunset Ridge Estates history. Word of Veronica's morning electrocution and public confession had spread faster than desert wildfire. 52 neighbors packed into our community center, standing room only, the smell of burnt coffee from the overworked machine mixed with nervous energy as people filed in. Some came seeking answers about their electric bills. Others wanted front row seats to watch their tyrannical HOA president finally get her comeuppance. Veronica arrived fashionably late, her bandaged hands and defeated posture telling the story of her morning electrical adventure. She'd traded her usual designer tennis outfit for a rumpled business suit that screamed emergency legal consultation. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, connecting my laptop to the community center's ancient projection system, "thank you for coming. Tonight we're going to discuss electrical safety, utility theft, and federal fraud in our neighborhood." The room went dead silent. I started with the basics: my solar panel installation, the mysterious electric bills, the security footage of unauthorized connections. The large screen displayed voltage charts, theft patterns, and financial calculations that painted a picture of systematic fraud spanning multiple years. "Over the past 24 months," I continued, "someone has stolen approximately $20,000 worth of electricity from 7 different households in this neighborhood." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Martinez leaned forward in his chair. The Hendersons exchanged knowing glances. Here's how it worked. I clicked to the next slide showing Veronica's illegal microgrid network. The perpetrator used HOA board access to identify solar panel owners, then created unauthorized connections to steal their power during peak demand periods. That's when Rosa stood up with her engineering credentials and technical analysis. "As a retired electrical engineer, I can confirm that this operation required sophisticated planning and intimate knowledge of neighborhood electrical infrastructure." Gerald and Patricia sat frozen at the board table, finally understanding they'd been accessories to federal crimes. But the real bombshell came when I played the morning's 9/11 recordings. Veronica's voice filled the room through the community center speakers. I've been using his electricity to charge my car for over a year. Everyone in the neighborhood does it, right? It's not really stealing if the power is just sitting there unused. Easy. The room erupted. Neighbors who'd been struggling with unexplained electric bills suddenly understood why. Families who'd invested in solar panels realized they'd been subsidizing Veronica's luxury car. Furthermore, I continued over the noise, this morning I received confirmation that the Arizona Attorney General's office has opened a criminal investigation based on evidence we provided last week. That's when the door opened and Arizona Public Service fraud investigator Tom Richardson walked in, badge visible, carrying an official briefcase. "Excuse me," he announced to the suddenly silent room. "I'm here to serve formal notice of criminal utility fraud charges against Veronica Sterling." The sound of his footsteps echoing on linoleum created the most dramatic entrance in HOA history. Veronica tried one last desperate play. "This is all a misunderstanding," she said, her voice cracking. "My husband handles all our electrical systems. I don't understand these technical details, .. "Ma'am," Investigator Richardson interrupted, "we have 18 months of surveillance footage showing you personally connecting unauthorized equipment to neighborhood solar systems. We also have this morning's recorded confession to multiple felonies." Rosa stood up with her final piece of evidence. "There's something else everyone should know. Sterling Pharmaceuticals claimed $2.3 million in federal green energy tax credits for an independent solar installation. The interconnected theft network invalidates those credits entirely." "That's federal tax fraud," Richardson confirmed. "FBI Financial Crimes Unit will be handling that portion of the investigation." The room buzzed with the electricity of justice finally being served. Neighbors who'd been intimidated by Veronica's authority for years were seeing her reduced to a defendant in federal fraud cases. But my mic drop moment came when I addressed Veronica directly. "You know what the most ironic part is, Veronica? If you'd just asked to share solar power costs legitimately, most of us would have helped you. Instead, you chose to steal, lie, and terrorize families who were just trying to save money on electricity bills." The room erupted in applause. Veronica's voice was barely audible over the noise. "I'll pay restitution. Full repayment plus damages. I just want this to end." "It will end," I replied. "In federal court." Richardson handed her the formal charging documents. "Mrs. Sterling, you're being charged with utility fraud, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy to commit wire fraud. You have the right to remain silent." As he read her rights, the community center erupted in sustained applause. Neighbors were hugging, crying, and celebrating the end of 8 years of systematic abuse. Gerald and Patricia quietly submitted their resignations to avoid being charged as accessories. Channel 12's news crew, who'd been filming outside, entered to capture the aftermath. Janet Wu approached me with her camera operator. "Mr. Morrison, how does it feel to finally get justice?" I looked around the room at neighbors who were finally free from Veronica's reign of terror. "It feels like coming home." 6 months later, justice tasted sweeter than Rose's morning coffee. Veronica paid $36,000 in restitution, treble damages plus penalties that made every stolen kilowatt hurt. Her plea bargain included 8 months community service and permanent ban from any Arizona HOA positions. Watching her pick up roadside trash every Saturday became our neighborhood's favorite weekend entertainment. The federal investigation concluded with Sterling Pharmaceuticals repaying $2.3 million in fraudulent tax credits. Veronica's marriage didn't survive the financial scandal. She slunk back to California, leaving behind a community that finally understood the difference between leadership and tyranny. Our new HOA board asked me to serve as electrical safety advisor, unpaid, because some things you do for principle, not profit. Every major decision now requires independent review, all meetings are live-streamed, and property values jumped 8% thanks to transparent management built on respect instead of fear. The most meaningful victory came from the Sunset Ridge Solar Collective Rosa and I founded. Using settlement money and donations, we help low-income seniors install theft-protected solar systems. Mrs. Henderson, now 73, saved $180 last month on electricity that would have gone to medications instead. That's real impact. My nightmare became Arizona Public Service's statewide anti-theft template. They hired me as a consulting contractor training fraud investigators, turning 18 months of hell into a career opportunity. Sometimes the universe has a twisted sense of justice. The sound of children playing freely in community areas replaced the tension that had poisoned our neighborhood for years. Weekend barbecues brought neighbors together instead of driving them into hiding. The smell of grilled burgers and honest conversation became our new normal. Rosa and I launched Solar Defense on YouTube, teaching homeowners to protect their investments from utility thieves. 75,000 subscribers later, we're helping families across the Southwest recognize and prevent electrical theft. Every video includes free legal resources most people never knew existed. For anyone fighting similar battles, monitor bills monthly for suspicious spikes, document everything in writing, and remember that Arizona's Residential Utility Consumer Office provides free fraud assistance at 602-364-4835. Security cameras are completely legal for protecting your property's electrical infrastructure. The texture of thank you cards from grateful neighbors fills a shoebox in my bedroom, proof that standing up to corruption changes real lives. Mrs. Patel wrote, "You gave us our home back. That's worth more than any settlement check." Channel 12's investigative series sparked statewide HOA reform hearings. 3 other communities discovered similar theft schemes after seeing our story. Veronica's operation wasn't unique, just uniquely stupid for targeting an electrician with security cameras and a stubborn streak. My relationship with grief changed too. Fighting for justice helped me process Sarah's loss in ways therapy never could. She would have loved watching me take down a neighborhood bully using nothing but technical knowledge and moral conviction. Some battles honor the dead by protecting the living. Desert sunsets from my patio look peaceful now. No more watching for late-night theft runs or wondering about retaliation. Just Arizona's natural beauty without the overlay of constant vigilance against criminal neighbors. The ripple effects continue spreading. Legislative hearings, additional prosecutions, reformed HOA laws, all because one electrician refused to accept systematic theft disguised as community management. But corruption doesn't sleep, and neither do the stories. Wait until you hear about the city building inspector who tried condemning my house over a personal grudge involving his brother's contracting business and a disputed permit. That tale includes city hall corruption, union politics, and building violations that existed only in one inspector's imagination. The fight never really ends, it just finds new battlefields. Here's what I learned. Knowledge is power, but courage to use that knowledge is everything. You don't have to accept abuse from petty tyrants with clipboards. Document everything, research your rights, and remember that bullies fold fastest when their victims fight back with facts instead of fear. Most importantly, you're not alone in these fights. Every corrupt HOA president, every fraudulent inspector, every petty bureaucrat abusing authority depends on victims staying isolated and intimidated. Share your HOA nightmares in the comments. Your story might help another family recognize warning signs before damage gets done. Subscribe to Karen Stories and hit notifications for new justice tales every Tuesday and Friday, plus live Q&As about homeowner rights and fighting corruption. Remember, they count on your silence. Don't give it to them. Justice tastes best when shared.